Today's AI topic is very grave, so I want to start with a disclaimer. This is a threat, not a certainty. This is just one possible future outcome. So I'm not saying it is probable. I'm saying it is possible. And today I will explain why this chilling outcome is about to become possible. A safe society is a society that is aware of all the possible future scenarios, to try to steer itself towards the good ones and avert the bad ones. My concern is that every futurist is exploring what would happen if AI goes rogue on us and eliminates humans. But no futurist is raising awareness of another very serious and completely new existential risk. What would happen if it's not AI, but the owners of AI who go rogue on the rest of us? Today, I will explain what could possibly push them to eliminate us. Hi, I'm Matt Garcia and I write books about Web3 and artificial intelligence. My approach comes from a mixture of hands-on experience working in tech and an academic background in biology and the history and philosophy of science that give me a big picture understanding of the current revolution. So if you are interested in the very big picture of AI, you can subscribe to this channel. Today's video is structured into 4 parts. First, I will explain why that old theory about the rich trying to reduce the world's population was a very silly conspiracy theory. Second, I will explain what has happened recently that completely transforms the relationship between the rich and the rest of us. Third, I will explain what could push the rich to turn against the rest of the population now that that relationship has changed. And finally, I will explain what you can do to prevent that terrible scenario from happening. Because remember, this is just a possibility, not a certainty. Consider this the same as when other futurists discuss the possibility of AI going rogue. They don't think that AI will certainly go rogue and that will certainly terminate us. But it is a very worthy conversation to have, to make sure that we prevent that from ever happening. Also, I want to stress that this is not a hate video against the rich. I'm on a personal wealth journey myself, and I have even written an entire book on how to become wealthy during the first decade of the current AI revolution. So I think I clearly am not against the wealthy at all. Okay, so now that that's been clarified, let's understand this existential threat that is flying under the radar. Why they needed lots of you. Conspiracy theories are like the fast food of ideas. They feel really satisfying, but in reality they are just empty calories without substance. This is because they don't account for how complex reality really is. For example, they overlook how the incentives of even the most powerful and wealthy individuals are frequently misaligned. Billionaires like Soros and Elon hate each other much more than they hate you. Politicians like Hillary and Trump are trying to destroy each other with such ferocity that they couldn't possibly cooperate to take you down. I'm not going to say that every conspiracy theory is entirely false and dumb, but the majority are. And one of the dumbest ones has always been also one of the most popular, is the one in which the rich would be conspiring to reduce the world's population. This one was so flawed because it misunderstood how the abundance, the services, the medicine, and all the other perks that the rich enjoy are produced. Because in our global, industrialized economies, the more humans there exist in the world, the more prosperous and healthy the rich can get. This is about to change, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But to understand why it is going to change, we must first understand the 2 reasons why until now the rich needed as many of you as possible. The first reason is the most obvious, the human doers. The production of goods and services requires lots of people in all types of roles and trades, from the most sophisticated white collar to the most manual blue collar. The second one is less obvious but equally important, the ideas people. It's much better to be wealthy in a world with advanced technology and medicine, like our current industrial societies, than in the Middle Ages in which a rotten tooth could send you to the grave. And all that progress that increases every year requires an awful lot of ideas people, in the form of scientists, technologists, entrepreneurs and innovators, biomedical researchers, and so on. The problem is that at any given time, only a tiny percentage of the overall working population can be ideas people. This is in turn due to 2 reasons. One is purely biological. Not every human is smart enough to be a good scientist, investor, or entrepreneur. So the more humans there exist at any given moment, the larger is the pool of highly talented individuals. The second reason is economic. In order for a society to have some humans spending their time doing research and coming up with new ideas, Lots of other humans must be doing all the regular doer jobs that can sustain the world's infrastructure that in turn supports those ideas people and the research infrastructure. You can't have a world with 99% of inventors and 1% of doers. It's the other way around. That's why the more humans there are, the more wealth can be generated, and also the more new science, technology, and medicine. That's why more people also means more comfortable and healthier rich people, or I rather should say meant. Why they no longer need you. AI is about to change the relationship between the rich and you. I won't go into all the details because I've already covered this in my 2 previous videos. Go and watch them because they will help you take this new threat more seriously. The link is up here. In the first video I explained the great human replacement, how the AGI robotics industrial complex will replace one after another all human jobs. Yes, all of them, even the most creative and empathy requiring. And don't be fooled, your job will also be replaced. I also explained why the 3 objections to this great replacement that you often hear in the media are fallacies that are great to calm the public down, but they are not backed by the technological and historical facts. This is because the 4th industrial revolution that we are in right now introduces the final ingredient that closes the automation loop of labor that had started with the previous 3 industrial revolutions. That ingredient is, of course, synthetic intelligence. In my second video, linked up here too, I explained what the great human replacement does to society, how unless there are massive societal changes, we are moving towards a 2-class society. In this society, the gap between the rich, the owners of the AGI robotic industrial complex, and the rest of the population, the people who rely on UBI for their survival, will become a fracture much deeper than our current wealth gap. I also explained one of the big myths regarding how economic abundance is generated. Contrary to popular belief, wealth generation doesn't require consumers. The economic machinery of wealth creation just needs 4 inputs, and none of them are consumers. The only 2 inputs that truly require humans are labor and innovation. And these inputs will be replaced by AI and AI-powered robots. Consumers are not required for the economic machinery to continue operating. The best way to visualize this is with a thought experiment. Imagine that we are in 2045. AGI was already achieved, and after some time, the AGI robotics industrial complex is already fully operational and taking care autonomously of the generation of all products and services in the economy. At this point, the AI robotics industrial complex has adapted its size to produce goods and services for 9 billion humans. Suddenly, a freak virus kills every human on Earth, except for one of the owners of the complex. This person had a weird gene mutation that protected him from the infection. Do you think this survivor lives in any less abundance just because there aren't lots of consumers around? Not at all. The AI industrial complex readjusts its production of goods and services to cater to just this one human's needs. If anything, this person will live even in more abundance than before and with much less risk of depleting the natural resources of the planet. Money, consumers, are useful tools to organize production when many people can buy and sell stuff. That's all. They are not necessary to generate wealth. They are necessary to exchange the fruits of wealth between many participants. This is why it is so concerning that many people are ignoring the risk of radical wealth concentration by saying, "But what will the rich do without us consumers? They need us to be rich." No, they don't. They needed you to create wealth, not to consume wealth. And unfortunately, very soon, they won't need you to create wealth any longer. Why they might need fewer of you? As we approach AGI and wealth creation begins to not depend on human labor, this will have many positive consequences. It will free humans from having to work for a living. It will also generate a wealth explosion for those who are lucky enough to own part of the AGI robotics industrial complex. But it will also introduce a completely new risk. Before this paradigm change, the more humans populated the Earth, the greater the overall world prosperity was. Now, the fewer humans populate the Earth, the more prosperity the remaining humans can enjoy. Let that sink in. The fewer humans, the better for the surviving humans. But here you could be wondering, okay Matt, but the fact that the rich don't need us for generating their wealth doesn't mean that they would need to eliminate us, right? Sharing just a tiny amount of their wealth to fund the universal basic income programs that sustain the rest of us That shouldn't break their bank, right? And that's a very reasonable assumption. And actually, if the AI industrial complex self-improves fast enough, the amount of wealth that the complex will create will be so ridiculously big that this existential risk might be completely averted. But nothing is a given. And the important thing is to be very aware of the new power balance after labor gets out of the picture. It's crucial not to overlook this completely new risk, even if it could be seen as low probability, because we are about to enter an era in which for the first time in history the rich can get even richer if there are fewer humans on Earth. And in the next section I will give details as to how exactly they could get even richer if there are fewer humans. But the important thing to focus on here is that this new selfish incentive had never existed before. And as the celebrated investor Charlie Munger famously said, "Tell me the incentives, and I'll tell you the outcome." As atrocious as it is to even think of it, for the first time in history it will actually make financial sense for the rich to get rid of the rest of the population. Fortunately, the picture is much more complex than this. There are many other incentives for humans apart from self-interest. Most humans are also naturally incentivized by compassion, empathy, and kinship. And hopefully, these incentives will overpower their self-interest. So although I don't think this is a probable existential risk for humanity, the fact that it is even possible has pushed me to make this awareness video. Because everybody knows about the nuclear war existential risk, and also more and more people are becoming aware of the rogue AI existential risk. But almost nobody is aware of this third existential risk, this completely new perverse economic incentive that favors population minimization. But let's get even more specific. What could possibly be tempting enough to push those who control the machines to take action against the rest of the population? What could push them to do it? Because after all, the coming AI-powered society will be much more abundant than ours, so what could the rich still covet so badly? The answer lies in the remaining bottlenecks of abundance generation. When we named the coming economy as the post-scarcity economy, we partly misrepresented it. Not everything will be abundant. There will still be limits to abundance creation. As we saw in the previous video, each input of wealth creation is also at the same time a bottleneck to wealth creation. When you reach the limit of any of the inputs, growth stalls. Now, the good thing is that after AGI and robotics replace the human labor input and the human innovation input, we will have just 2 bottlenecks to worry about instead of 4. This means that the amount of available humans won't be a bottleneck for wealth creation, because we will be able to produce as much synthetic labor and as many synthetic innovators, entrepreneurs, and scientists as we want. Well, no. We will be able to produce much more labor and much more innovation. But more is not equal to infinite. Our capacity to generate abundance will still be capped by the amount of the remaining 2 inputs. Take the first one, for example, natural resources. Within this category, we have things like energy and raw materials. These are essential to build just about any product that humans may want, but they are also essential to build and to power more of the doers, that is, more of the computers and robots that will take care of the production and innovation. Now, it is true that AI will help us to exploit new raw materials, find new sources of energy, bring resources from other planets and so on, but we will still go through plateau periods that will temporarily stall growth. Another thing that we have within this natural resources input is a type of asset that in my book I call post-scarcity resistant assets. These are assets that will remain scarce no matter how intelligent and efficient the AGI industrial complex gets. And one of my favorite post-scarcity resistant assets is land. And judging by the amount of it that all the big tech billionaires are hoarding, I'm not the only one who finds it attractive. Land is so desirable in a post-scarcity society because you simply cannot manufacture more Earth's surface. Land could also become one of the ultimate objects of conspicuous consumption in a world in which so many other things become extremely cheap to produce. Also, what happens in a post-work world in which the work incentive to live cramped in city dwellings disappears? In such a world, many of us will prefer to get a primary or at the very least a secondary residence outside of the city where we can enjoy more space and nature. And thanks to the robotic employees, these estates can be as big as your fancy and your pocket because you won't need to put up with a single annoying, nosy human to tend to your mega mansion or to maintain your mega state. The non-working rich might become a bit like the non-working aristocrats of the 18th and 19th century, who did visit their townhouses in London and Paris once in a while, but who spent most of their idle lives vacationing in each other's gigantic country states. So the limit for this hunger for private space will just be a matter of how deep your pockets are and how much supply of this limited resource is available. Because the demand pressure on land won't just be residential. Industry, mining, agriculture, and the ever-growing data centers will also be competing for the available land, and all these require more resources the more humans they need to cater to. At some point, those who control the machines and the resources may start connecting the dots, getting ideas. What if? Because, and this is also very important to consider, how many rich people there will be in the future consuming like crazy and competing for the natural resources. As of 2024, the Forbes list amounts to only 2,781 billionaires. It is difficult to see how just 3,000 billionaires could be land greedy enough to find the amount of land available on Earth insufficient for their mega needs. But the amount of billionaires keeps growing year after year, as does the number of millionaires. In these statistics, a millionaire is a person who, apart from the value of their main residence, have at least one spare $1 million in assets that they can move around towards different investments. According to Credit Suisse's Global Wealth Report, in 2022 there were 62.5 million people in this millionaire category, and their wealth is going to explode at the same time that the billionaires' wealth explodes, because as the AI revolution unravels, people with investable wealth are going to start acquiring equity where the money is being made. And where is that? Exactly, the AI and robotics corporations. As AI approaches AGI and the value of these AI companies goes exponential, all these people are going to see their wealth and purchase power explode exponentially too. I like to say that soon trillionaire could be the new billionaire and billionaire the new millionaire. Now imagine a world with not 3,000 but 60 million billionaires trying to hoard as many homes, mega yachts, airplanes and land as the likes of Bill Gates or Jeff Bezos or Prince Al-Walid do now. The post-scarcity economy could start to look a bit less post-scarce with such demand pressure. But it isn't just the natural resources input that could become a significant bottleneck. There's another much more important thing of which we can never get enough. Compute greed. Compute is to the 21st century what oil was to the 20th century. A new form of gold that everybody needs because it powers everything. Compute can be seen as a modern-day philosopher's stone because it makes the machines come alive and do all sorts of intellectual and physical jobs for us. The more compute we have, the more science we can generate, the more medicine, the more entertainment, the more manufacturing, because everything will be powered by AI compute. But we won't have infinite compute simply because ultimately compute relies on the raw materials to build the microchips and the energy to power those chips. And even if we get better at producing chips and find new energy sources, even then the amount of heat that the data centers produce is a limiting factor. Ben Horowitz, one of the top venture capitalists of Silicon Valley, puts it this way.
Once we get by the chip bottleneck, like if we had unlimited chips, the AI power consumption would be like over 10% of global power consumption, I think is pretty clear, just on AI. And that's tiny compared to what people want to use on AI, but can't yet because there aren't enough chips. So I think hardware power for sure. And then you get into, okay, well, what's the next thing that you run into? And it's, well, if you are having like a gigawatt data center, cooling becomes a very hard problem. Like even if you stick it in the middle of the ocean and use the ocean light, like you're starting to boil all the water around the thing.
It's a Russian doll of bottlenecks. So even in the post-scarcity society, compute will still be scarce. The problem is that many people are overlooking this bottleneck because of the presentist bias. And this presentist bias affects even people working in tech. I've even heard some AI analysts saying things like, nobody needs more than a 2 million token context in their AI models, which is the modern version of what a Silicon Valley executive famously said in the 90s. Nobody will ever need more than 640K of memory in their computer. Well, 20 years later, I can tell you I have 42,000 times more memory than that in my laptop, and still every time I'm editing a complex video, I find it painfully slow. No matter how efficient our microchips get, we will always be hungry for more because the more compute you have, the more things you can do. And the perverse reverse side of that coin is that the fewer people consuming compute there are, the more compute there is for the remaining people. It's not the same to have enough compute to create one personalized movie every night for 60 million humans than for 600 million humans than for 9 billion humans. And after personalized movies will come the personalized video games that will consume even more compute. And after that, the personalized virtual realities that will require orders of magnitude even more compute. And if we ever manage to upload our minds to the servers to live immortally there, imagine the monstrous amount of compute that will be needed to recreate each human and to create entire simulated universes that those humans can inhabit. Do you see how it escalates? It's never ending. But we don't need to go that far on the timeline. Long before such amazing things are even attainable, compute will be a scarce resource for things as important and as close to us in time as hyper-personalized medicine. AI is already starting to revolutionize biomedical research. Soon it will be possible to design drugs and therapies personalized for your specific condition, your metabolism, your own specific genome and epigenome. And once again, the fewer humans there are putting demand pressure on the available amount of compute that the complex can produce, the more for the remaining ones. Exactly, compute greed and hoarding could become a very dangerous incentive. How can you stop it? Awareness, awareness, awareness. That's the key. Share this video, talk about it with your family and friends. The more people learn about this possibility, the smaller the risk gets. Because with greater awareness comes greater social vigilance. And social vigilance will make two things much more difficult. One, that the controllers of the complex can get organized against the rest of us. And two, that a perverse ideology can be born to justify this outcome. Point two is crucial because this type of crime doesn't only require selfishness, it would also require a substantial process of ideology making. The majority of people are not sociopaths and won't just support a genocide out of pure cold self-interest. However, the majority of people are great at self-deluding themselves into believing convenient ideologies. Ideologies that morally justify something that in reality benefits them financially. That's how throughout history all kinds of selfish systems were supported by the dominant classes. That's why slave owners could sleep so well at night despite owning people, because they had decided to believe that those were not really people, but some kind of subspecies between a human and an animal. That's why feudal lords and the aristocracy thought it was okay to have special laws for themselves, and why absolute monarchs were to be obeyed absolutely and without question, because the king had been chosen for that role by God. And even more recently, for a long time after our democracies were established, the poor didn't have a right to vote. And we had all sorts of theories that we firmly believed about why it would be immoral and wrong for the poor to vote. All those humans profiting from those systems weren't cold-blooded sociopaths. They were just normal people using ideology to delude themselves. So the less isolated the rich are from the rest of society, the more difficult it would be for such a perverse ideology to emerge. Conversations like the right to compute or universal high income versus universal basic income are important to have and can prevent our society from becoming polarized into two completely isolated castes. So I invite you to spread the word. If you can, please share this video on social media, and not just this video, do the same with any other piece of content that discusses this same topic. Anyway guys, thanks so much for watching and for raising awareness about this issue. And remember, this is just one potential negative outcome, but if we do things right, the outcome of the AI revolution could be extremely beneficial for humanity. As I like to say, paraphrasing Charles Dickens, it could be the worst of times, but it could also be the best of times. Thank you.